Today, on this very spooky episode of the Picture This Photography podcast, we're going to be talking about ghost photos. Because ghosts are real. And we're going to talk about the history of ghost photos, the mystery of ghost photos, and the making of ghost photos.
In this podcast, just as in real life, I'm the Scully and you're the Mulder. If you've ever seen X-Files.
You're not a Mulder or a Scully.
You know what I want to believe in? Squarespace, a company that allows you to make websites incredibly easy. Go to squarespace.com/Chelsea. Drag your pictures in, set up a store, take appointments from clients, whatever it is. It is much easier to believe in than any of what Chelsea is about to show you. When you love it, use the coupon code Chelsea and you can get 10% off. Thanks, Squarespace.
Thanks, Buzzkill. Let's talk about some ghosts. We're going to be talking about ectoplasm, orbs, and ghostly figures. But first, I want to talk about the first ghost photos, Tony. Now, I'm getting the feeling that you don't believe in this, which is kind of a bummer because this is some pretty cool stuff. So the first ghost photos, I believe, may have been a mistake because they were, this one's from 1920, but they were taken in the 1800s, and photography wasn't very accessible to everyone. It was expensive.
Yep.
It was done on glass plates or daguerreotypes, tin types. It wasn't like it is now where everyone has a camera. And they would do things like make double exposures, which is when you take a picture, you don't advance the film, and then you take another one and you get this overlapping of pictures, and it would look quite ghostly. And so we can see in this picture here, taken in 1920, you have a couple sitting down with what they describe as a young female spirit.
In this particular photo, this seems deliberate because of the way it's composed. The older couple appears only in the bottom half of the picture, and the entire top half of the picture is completely black, which is exactly how you set up a good double exposure. You want to leave some blackness.
I think that before you start talking about how fake this is, you should look at this picture.
Okay.
And this picture is a ghost scaring two men. Copyrighted by Mumler and Brothers, 1889.
Yeah, it's a really good quality photo. It doesn't seem staged at all. It just seems like candid. They were just trying to take a nice family photo. And then, whoa, suddenly a ghost appeared just as they snapped the shutter.
Okay. Well, I agree. This one also looks very staged. But let's talk about kind of the history of ghost photos. So there was this guy, William Mumler, in the 1860s, and he was originally a jewelry engraver, Tony. But he moved to photography because it was quite lucrative. They made like $1 per photo at the time.
Just like we do today.
Yeah, that's actually, some people do make about $1 per photo, but that was a good price then, unlike now. So he started taking pictures. He was taking a self-portrait of himself when a ghostly figure appeared in his photo.
Ooh.
And he realized that he captured a ghost. So he was showing people and they liked it, and so he started taking spirit photos for other people. And you can see here.
Wait, what? He found a way to make this profitable?
You can see here a woman sitting, and it's Mary Todd Lincoln, and that's her husband, Abraham Lincoln.
I've heard of them.
Have you heard of them?
Yeah.
Well, this is them, and they're, they don't have to be living to be in love, okay? So he took these pictures, and it was really popular, Tony, because this was post the Civil War. And I don't know if you know, but a lot of people died during the Civil War. So he had a lot of
that too.
He had a lot of clients that wanted to connect to their loved ones, and so this was really popular. Until P.T. Barnum came along and said, "This seems fake." Now,
do you know that P.T. Barnum is literally my great uncle? By marriage, but he did marry into my family.
are you kidding me?
No, I'm not kidding.
He's like the greatest huckster of all time.
Yeah.
Okay, that maybe not.
I mean, I guess he tricked my great aunt into it.
Well, okay, so he was like a professional trickster, and he said, "This smells kind of fishy to me," and so he started looking into it, and he realized this whole thing was a sham, a scam, not real. Tony, ghosts are real, but not this one.
Okay.
So
We're going to get to the real examples later.
yeah, so Mumler was sued. He actually went to court over this because for fraud. He was frauding people. And so they brought in chemists and photographers, 9 of them, to talk about whether or not this could be faked. And they said yes. They probably cited the same things we're talking about, like double exposures and things like that. But he was acquitted because they said you could not prove it. But people were onto him because sometimes their living relatives would show up as ghosts in the background, and they realized he was sneaking into their homes and stealing their family pictures.
Yeah, he'd get a client and then break through their window and steal a picture so he could make a double exposure of it. What a scumbag.
I think it's dedication to the craft. But I don't condone that behavior.
The ethical thing for me is sometimes people take comfort in these things. Like you're grieving so hard when you lose a loved one, and then somebody can come along and say, it's okay, they're still with you. And if they're lying, but it makes you feel better, is that entirely a bad thing? I mean, ethically, I think you just have to draw the line at fraud and lies. But
what if you don't
understand
charge them? What if it's free?
That's certainly better than profiting off of him, but this dude definitely charged him. He made a lot of money.
Well, after this trial, he stopped doing photography. He stopped doing spirit photography, and he actually went on to create something called the Mumler process, which was the ability to print pictures directly on newsprint, which had not been done before. So he was known for other things, but really was he? Who's going to forget this one, Mumler?
Was he working for the Weekly World News?
I don't know. I know nothing more about the man. But Tony, this happens in modern days too. This isn't just old-timey trickery, okay? The ghost photos are still with us.
Oh, I know. We always go on those ghost tours because one of us is Mulder. So, like, Key West.
Southernmost Ted, check him out.
Yeah. Mystic, Connecticut.
Where
was the one?
Charleston.
Oh, Charleston and then New Orleans?
I haven't seen a ghost yet. But there's great history and not history. There's great stories that are not history, but there's also history, and you might see a ghost.
Yeah.
Okay? So I don't think there needs to be judgment in this podcast, quite frankly. You could say your piece. You're not a good time. And I'll say my piece. I'll like a spooky stuff. So here's a picture of a woman in some kind of vehicle that I cannot identify. And next to her is a ghost.
Or it could be a reflection off of the glass, because that glass sort of half reflects things sometimes.
I actually do think this one's a reflection. But this one, John Huckards mystery camera. Have you heard this one?
I saw this episode of Scooby-Doo.
No, this is not an episode. I saw this on NPR, so it's real. Stop it. This is supposed to be spooky. Stop laughing. I put skulls in the background for this. Tony, there's a crow back there. Do you not see the effort I put in?
Yeah.
Okay, John Huckards mystery camera. John Huckard got a Polaroid camera from his dad in 1991. It was a Polaroid Spectra, which sounds like Spectre. Coincidence? Absolutely not. He goes to take a picture, and there's this white, cloudy stuff that develops on the film, and he thinks, oh, this film's ruined. He takes another one. He thinks, oh, my dad's a trickster. He's trying to make me think it's ghosts. So John has his friends over, and he tells them about it. And they say, well, if it's ghosts, let's ask if they're here. Are you here? And they take a picture, and in a spooky cloud, it says, Y-E-S. That spells yes.
Okay, you did give me a few chills there.
Okay. So he goes on to keep asking questions and taking pictures, and he ends up taking 12,000 of these pictures. And people came in and they tried to disprove it. People tried to prove he was writing on the film, but that ain't it.
No. How do we know that's not it?
He said so. And so he took 12. Who would take 12,000? You know how much that film would be? We need to send John money.
It's almost like people might have paid him to take some of these photos.
They didn't. No. You're wrong. Did you read about John? Because I did.
I did listen to the same NPR podcast as you.
Okay, I remember you were there. You are my husband. So people haven't figured out how John does this if it's him. But if it's a ghost, things are kind of falling into place because no one's figured it out. And you know what? They discontinued the Polaroid Spectra film, and that's the only film it worked on. So we can't debunk this one. We don't have the funds or the film.
Can I just take a huge leap out here? He just
Yeah.
wrote on it. He just wrote on the film. It seems super straightforward. And the fact that he stopped being able to do it after they discontinued Spectrafilm makes me think it was some sort of chemical process, like maybe he brushed on some bleach or something, and they changed the formula, and if it no longer worked then...
Well, I don't think you can prove or disprove this one. So we're going to leave this one, we're going to just say this one is a mystery.
Yeah, there are two possibilities. One is he wrote on it. The other is that
Ghosts.
human beings have a spirit that persists after we die, and those spirits can come back and interact with the human world, but the only way they can interact with us is with a specific formulation of Polaroid spectrofilm, and they only did it with John Huckards' camera, nobody else's camera.
You're going to feel so foolish when
It's
you're a
one of
ghost.
those two possibilities, whichever one you think might be more likely.
Okay, well, you know what's a sure thing? Getting a great website with Squarespace, because anyone can do it, Tony. I remember I tried to do WordPress and I couldn't finish it. That thing was boring. But
a nightmare
Squarespace
of
has
plugins.
the instant gratification. You just drag your pictures in. There's professional looking templates. It looks like you had a web designer do your web page, and you can get one done in like 10, 15 minutes. That's the time frame I need. And it's free. 14 days, no credit card needed, so you don't have to remember to cancel. How stressful is that? You don't have to do that. You just try it. Your trial will expire after 14 days, and you're going to say, that was cool. I wish I still had that. Now, here's the thing. Go to squarespace.com/Chelsea and use the coupon code Chelsea to get 10% off, and you can get your Squarespace website. That's CHELSEA. Do it.
Can I speak to the WordPress people out here?
Yeah.
I have had a Squarespace website for many years now, and I've never had to update anything.
Yeah, it's easy.
No plugins, none of that. Like, they just provide everything. They manage it for you. No break-ins, no security problems. Like, I just make content on it. I don't have to fuss with anything nerdy at all.
And it's like
so nice.
seamless on your phone, so when you go to show somebody, you're not like, oh, it's not right. It's perfect.
It's
Thank
the
you,
only way to make a
Squarespace.
website.
Now, Tony, I think you're going to like this part, because I want to talk about how these ghost pictures are made other than ghosts. Like, clearly, sometimes it's a ghost. But when it's not a ghost, what is it? The first one is a double exposure.
Okay, double exposures happen accidentally, especially if you shoot older film cameras, like medium format cameras, where you have to manually crank to advance the film. You can just forget to advance the film, and the second shot you take will appear over the first one. Most of the time, it looks like garbage. It's overexposed, but
Yeah.
especially if you're shooting a dark subject, something on a dark background, it can look like two separate photos taken simultaneously. So people did figure this out, and they started using it deliberately, which is why a lot of these ghost photos are taken on dark backgrounds with a lot of empty negative space, so they could overlay a second brighter subject that was just more lit and get it all done in camera. That also helps with the trickery. Like, if somebody wants to bring their
What
own...
trickery?
If somebody wants to try to prove that you're doing some trickery, you can already have the first exposure captured in camera, and then they come and sit down for your camera, and you're taking the second photo onto that same plane of film.
Yeah.
And thus you can pull it out right away and show it to them, and they'll be like, whoa, cool, there was no trickery done because you just pulled it out of the camera.
There's never trickery. It doesn't work like that. Also, there's a double exposure mode in your camera, so if you want to try, you can just go to that. We have a video on it. Just search it on our channel. And the new Polaroid cameras have a double exposure mode.
Oh,
So-
for contacting the dead.
Just saying. Another method is long exposures. I even made one. So here's a little ghost baby on the grave. That is sad. Sorry, baby. And if you do a long exposure and your subject moves, then it looks like a ghost. And you can see here I have ghost hands.
So you need to be able to do an exposure for multiple seconds, which means the room needs to be dark, or you have to have a neutral density filter on your camera. Once that happens, anything that is lit and moving through the frame will appear as a blur. And if you've ever done light painting, we have a chapter in Stunning Digital Photography on light painting, it'll happen accidentally, which is why if you don't want to appear in long exposures, you're supposed to wear like all black, so you're not reflecting any light back to the camera. But if you do want to appear, you could wear a long flowing white gown and
That
then
sounds
move through the
awesome.
frame and look spooky.
Let's do it. We have a video on spooky portraits. You can look that up on our YouTube channel. Because that's when we made these, and I choked you in yours. Do you remember that?
Yeah, yeah.
That was fun. Starting to feel like maybe we should do another one. Then there's a long exposure plus a flash, and that's when you get pictures where everything is still, but there's some movement. And in this photo, there is a guy at a podium, and there's a ghost next to him. They said it was the ghost of his brother, but it looks to me like they popped a flash as he was reaching for something in the foreground. So you got him solid, and then you got him like before the flash fired. And you can see evidence of that to the women in the right. The one to the right has a little bit of motion blur as well. So yeah, long exposure plus a flash.
This could definitely convince the photographer because it can happen accidentally. So the photographer could get the result and be like, whoa, what the heck is happening here? Like they could genuinely believe it, which makes it very convincing. But having worked with really old cameras that don't sync properly with the flash, they don't have TTL, through the lens metering, where the camera automatically adjusts the exposure based on the flash's output. So the camera can be exposed the camera can be set to properly expose the scene without the flash. And so it might be, a quarter-second exposure, a long exposure, and then you attach the flash, and the camera properly exposes the scene and then fires the flash at the beginning or end. So you almost get a double exposure effect even with a single exposure, because the flash alone will expose everything properly, and then the long exposure will expose everything properly.
Those pictures are cool when they do them deliberately for action photos.
Yeah.
I love that.
Dragging the shutter there.
Okay, and then orbs, which is one that I see a lot. And these are the ones that they try to get you to take on the ghost tours, where they're like, put your flash on. Like, I kind of wish I didn't know so much about photography because it's kind of ruining my ghost tours, honestly. But orbs can show up if there's rain and your flash is bouncing off of it. Dust, maybe you're in a building and there's dust coming off the ceiling, or there's spider webs that have trapped some dust or bugs.
Those little gnats that fly around that you can barely see?
Yeah, it could be bugs. It could be a number of things, or ghosts, but most likely rain, dust, or bugs.
Also, infrared light, especially, you would never see it, but in security cameras that transmit infrared light around the lens, it'll hit the things floating in the air and bounce right back, but everything's out of focus, so it just shows like a bokeh ball.
Yeah, we have a spider near our front Nest cam.
It scares the crap out of me at least once a week.
Because you believe in ghosts, he says. It's a ghost.
I believe in spiders.
Oh, and then there is ectoplasm.
These pictures are so
And
creepy.
it's like smoke, fog, breath, or cloth. So they used to do these old-timey seances, Tony, and they would say that the ectoplasm was like the ghost leaving your body or something like that. And they would stuff their mouth with paper or cloth, and then they'd pull it out. And you can see these photos, like now it's obvious to us that that's just fabric, but they really thought they were doing something cool. I think now that the ectoplasm you see is usually just someone's breath, you'd be surprised by how much you can produce. And then you take a picture with a flash and it would look really gigantic. Or it could be like mist on the ground, fog, or ghosts. We can't rule out ghosts.
Yeah.
You know?
That's the thing, you can never actually rule it out.
Some of us want to. This is just like our UFO conversations, like, just pretend they're real, Tony.
It is just like our UFO conversations, which happen regularly, by the way.
And then, because I want to believe, like, every 5 years, I'm like, but what if they are real? And then I look them up and I'm like, it's not. Then there's reflections, which we saw with this cool lady in the vehicle. A lot of interesting things can happen with reflections. It bounces light, you know, you're seeing things that you don't think are there.
Yeah, a lot of these ghost pictures are the reflection of somebody in a window and the person is off camera, but they have light on them. So they're showing up just as bright as things in the foreground, but you can also kind of see through them because it's a reflection on glass.
Yeah, reflections are tricky. And then lastly, I wanted to mention, I think the last one is imagination, because the human brain is wired to see faces and figures. It's just what we're designed to do. I see faces in everything, clouds, textures, a water stain on the ceiling. You just look and you see a face or a figure. Sometimes I see the vacuum out of the corner of my eye and I'm like, oh, it's not a person, it's just the vacuum.
Yeah, I spent much of my childhood terrified of just shadows that would sometimes appear cast on the wall that happen to look like a face. And even sometimes as an adult, I'll see some weird shadow in the room and I'll wake up with a start.
Yeah.
And I'll be like, oh, it's just a shadow.
Yeah, we're just wired to see spooky threats. That's my presentation on ghosts. Okay, if you have any ghost stories, ghost photos, if you think you could prove how that guy took the Polaroids, I'd like to hear your theories other than Tony's. You could try to sway Tony if you want to make him believe in ghosts.
Yes, please try to convince me that ghosts are real.
I hope one gets you, Tony. And I hope you get a Squarespace website. Thank you, Squarespace, for making this podcast possible. If you want to get your very own Squarespace, go to the description down below and you can hit squarespace.com/Chelsea and use the coupon code Chelsea to get 10% off. That's CHELSEA. See you next time and have a very happy Halloween.
Don't forget to subscribe. Bye.
Just for all your ghost bullshit, I'm keeping in on all those.